Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Elise Adler, Director of Events for Parnassus Books. We are delighted to share tonight's event featuring author, ordained minister, radio host, and professor in the College of Arts and Science and in the Divinity School at Vanderbilt University, Michael Eric Dyson. Just as a reminder, you can purchase signed copies of his book, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America, from Parnassus Books. And we'll go ahead and we'll put the link in the Facebook comments for you. Tonight, we're going to be taking questions, which you can also put in the Facebook comments. We are so excited because tonight, Michael is in conversation with Nashville Public Library's manager of the Special Collections Division, which includes the Civil Rights and Votes for Women's Spaces, Andrea Blackman. I'm so pleased to turn it over to Michael and Andrea.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good evening. How are you doing?
I am doing great and trying not to be total fangirl, but I'm going to start off by saying I greet you, the Right Reverend Dr. Head Honcho, the man, Michael Eric Dyson. Did I get all the titles in there?
You got them all right. That's
all right.
Hilarious.
It is. I am delighted to be in conversation with you tonight, and I hope you're adjusting to Nashville okay. Are you?
Yeah, well, I'm doing it virtually because I'm not physically there yet. But but it's so funny. My wife is literally in Nashville right as we speak, trying to find out a good place to live. So, you know.
Okay. All right. I wish her the best with that. She's got some great options.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I also want to congratulate you on your most recent nomination. Yet again, this is your 6th nomination in NAACP Outstanding Literary Award. Congratulations.
Wow, I was trying to figure out how many. I'm glad you knew that, man.
It's 6. It's 6. You won 5 and were nominated for 6. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Problem. Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get started. We have tons of people who are tuned in tonight to discuss this amazing piece, this amazing piece of work, 230 pages of remarkable iterations that cause each of us to actually just stop. And you're causing us to face this reckoning, as you call it. Your book is a way of social redemption, in my opinion. Before we dig deep into these chapters, I have to ask you a couple of background questions. Just the title itself, Long Time, The Reckoning of Race in America. You decided to pen these particular letters and epistles to these different martyrs, as we said. You, throughout the book, you mentioned so many people. You list the names, you call forth names, some names that we've forgotten, some names that many of us have never heard before. You called the name forth Tarika Wilson. You called the name Katherine Johnson. You wrote about Darius Stewart, Alonzo Smith. You gave us pages and pages of Black martyrs who all have been murdered by the hand of, as you said, the Blue Plague. Talk to us a little bit with painting such a clearly perfect picture and composite of tragedy and Black death. Why these martyrs? Why did you select these people?
Well, first of all, Ms. Blackman, what a great honor it is to be here with you, a woman of such pedigree and standing and stature in our community. So thank you so much for this tremendous opportunity to Parnassus Books for this wonderful opportunity. I look forward to being there physically and hanging out, going to get some Nashville hot chicken and then hanging out with y'all,
Me too.
So, I wanted to focus on martyrs who could bring me a certain kind of return on certain issues that I think are important in American society. Mm-hmm. So speaking about Sandra Bland, I thought I could talk about white comfort that way. Mm-hmm. And the comfort we have of not knowing Black people, the comfort of not having to engage with the history of Blackness, and the comfort of not being disturbed out of our narrow conceptions of what appropriately acting Black people should do. With Breonna Taylor, it was about white theft of Black culture. And it didn't just start with the theft of her life, but the theft in slavery of African life in America and what that meant in terms of stealing our futures, bodies and resources. With Eric Garner, it's about the theme of the blue plague, he and George Floyd, and the horrendous deaths that they endured, especially George Floyd, as I paint that picture in that chapter. Or, with Elijah McClain, I wanted to speak about the beautiful innocence of Black youth and how it's being trampled upon by the iron feet of racist expression in some police departments. So, depending upon the theme I wanted to drive, the martyr chosen permitted me a certain kind of purchase on those ideas to be able to expand and amplify them in the broader telling of their stories.
Great. So I want to piggyback off of that a little bit more. And when you sat down to pen these epistles, and you chose to write letters to them, and you speak in the letters not only to them, but you speak to us, the collective us, you speak to the communal us as well. There are parts that you say this is for white folks particularly, and then you're speaking to us as a community of people of color. So tell me, what was your entry point, right? When you decided to write this book, you were entering it how? What made you write? Was it the night that George Floyd was murdered? Was it you looking at your 3 grandchildren? Was it the fact that you bore witness to so many other protests? What is it that drove you to enter into this book?
No, it's a great point. And yes, all of that. Thinking about my grandkids, looking at George Floyd's death that night, or the next day when they, when it finally got circulated and played that night, the next day. And of course, that same day that George Floyd died was the day that, the Central Park, Karen was involved, with trying to calling the police on Christian Cooper. I think her name is Amy Cooper and he's Christian Cooper, no relation there. And so it was a heck of a day for race relations that holiday weekend. And seeing George Floyd die like that with no provocation, no justification, no relief, no recognition of his humanity, sent me into a tailspin, sent me into a necessary cave of reflection, because as Black people, we see these traumas and we expose ourselves to these traumas and we are hurt time and again. And we have to figure out the best way to handle it. And I figured the best way for me to handle it is to handle it by telling the truth, by writing about it, by going to my computer and hammering out what I believe to be truths that were necessary to grapple with if we were to prevent something like this from ever happening again. So that night, planted that seed pretty quickly. And right after that, I took to my computer and began hammering out my beliefs about what should happen. And the death of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, also inspired me, along with the death of Mr. Floyd, to really take up my pen.
Yeah. You spoke about your truth, and we all, in my work, we talk about truth telling and truth sharing. So my next question is about truth. How do we present truth to folks when they say, this is too heavy, man, I'm so tired of hearing this? Aren't we post that? We're post that. After Obama, we were post-racial. After Biden and Harris, we were post everything, right? And so how do we stand and continue to tell our truths when people say, aren't we past that? That's a little bit too heavy to read, too hard to hear. Help us understand that.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's on both sides, right? Both sides, I'm talking about non-Black people say that, and Black people like, look, it's too much trauma. It's too much grief. Reading that all over again, the hurt, the pain, the agony. And I can understand why some people don't want to deal with this. And part of it is generational, I think. A lot of younger people are like, trigger warnings. I ain't had no trigger warning except the warning that the trigger was about to be pulled and get out the way. I'm 62 years old and we didn't have those kinds of healthy self-regards and healthily self-regarding practices that permitted us to warn ourselves against the repeated exposure to trauma. Who held those kids and boys in the hood, 1991, when they're standing around looking at the dead body?
Right.
A lot of Black people don't have a filter to keep themselves from the trauma. And in some instances, I understand why we do, but in other instances, I say if we're going to be, talking about being like poor Black people who don't have the ability to protect themselves from some of that trauma, then we ought to watch it too.
Right. Right. Someone has to bear that burden, huh? We all share in bearing that burden.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what it is. A kind of religious, responsibility to share together that burden. So, yeah, I know there's a lot of fatigue out there and a lot of white brothers and sisters and others. Look, oy vey, we've been here and done that. We don't want to do it again. But, the Capitol reminds us we ain't done enough. The Proud Boys remind us we ain't done enough. Charlottesville reminds us we ain't done enough. Kenosha, Wisconsin reminds us we ain't done enough. Jacob Blake, the young 17-year-old bigot and terrorist who is out free on bail right now, even flashing signs of the, okay, white supremacist, white terrorists, signal. Or the white woman who admitted she went up into Nancy Pelosi's office. They let her off on bail and out of jail so she can go on vacation. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We ain't done enough. We ain't seen enough. We haven't grappled enough with the fundamental structures of injustice and inequity in this culture in order to say enough is enough.
Right.
Let's pass this by. Until such time, we got to keep digging.
We keep digging, we keep bearing witness, we keep standing in our truth. Yeah, definitely agree.
Absolutely.
So I want to dig into the chapters, if you don't mind. The idea that like we get to have our own little book club. I'm such a book nerd because I really want to talk about 2 other of your books as well, but we could talk about that later off the top. Okay. But I do want to, I want to jump into the first chapter. And I love the way you started off, right? You start a couple of pages in, this is the letter to Elijah McClain. And you said, "Dear Elijah, permit me here to address those white folk for a bit. My fellow Americans, I beg you, first consider this. Do you realize how much faith it takes for me and for those like me to write my fellow Americans? Do you realize how much energy it takes to summon the will to say those words? Do you realize that I am weary, how weary we are, millions of Black folks in this country? And right from the start, it's a troubled we, a complicated we, and a disputed we of being denied recognition as Americans or even as human beings." In this chapter, in this letter, you paint such a passionate picture of Mr. Young Elijah. You give humanity to him and his story. Talk to us a little bit about when people said they are enraged. Right. And the difference in just the notion of rage and what rage looks like, because you're countering it, because you're bringing in some humanity here.
Right. No, and often the rage of Black people is love turned inside out, right? If Dr. King could say that the riots are the voice of the unheard, then rage is the love of the unembraced. And so, that was it's hard to write that about Elijah McClain. On the spectrum, arguably a sweet young 23-year-old man, wouldn't hurt a fly, and he said so. You think about the politics of respectability, where Black people use our good behavior as a potential shield or a desired, protection and defense against white supremacy, as if they knew we were smart, they would behave better toward us. Or if they knew we were intelligent or beautiful or moral, that they would somehow treat us better, but they don't care. It's not a matter of treating us poorly because of our characteristics. It's the exact opposite. Regardless of what we bring to the table, we are grossly underestimated and brutally mistreated. And here was a young man saying, look, I understand you. He went through all the changes. You're nice people, speaking to the cops. You're wonderful people. Hey, I don't eat meat. No, I'm not judging people who do.
Right. I'm not that kind of guy. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not that. I mean, it was the beauty of his spirit against the barbaric and brutal refusal to acknowledge his humanity by these white cops. And they rendered him unconscious twice. He's all of what, is he even 5'6", 140 some pounds? And they mistreated him in such fundamentally horrible fashion, and then rendered him unconscious twice. And then when the EMT showed up, they administered ketamine, and then he went into shock, a coma, and a week later, dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's painful, it's traumatic, it's evil. But I wanted to paint that story so that others could understand.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and specifying that idea of rage, and particularly Black rage. People don't think that there's, or they want to say there's no such thing as a Black rage versus a white rage. There's only rage. So thank you for painting that picture. We move on to Emmett Till's letter. And I love the way you go back and forth between history and contemporary. I love the way you connect Emmett Till to Christian Cooper. And when you brought up the idea of Karening earlier in your earlier comments. Talk to us a little bit about the tragedy and just the idea of the lynching and the notion of in a contemporary lens, and comparing the historic plus the contemporary Emmett Till and Christian Cooper.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I did see some resemblances and some family affinities. The way in which Emmett Till was snatched from his home, or his uncle's home, his relative's home in Money, Mississippi, where he was visiting from Chicago, and taken out of that home that night because these two white men, one of whom's, whose a wife, Carolyn Bryant, was allegedly verbally accosted by a wolf whistle, although she admitted when she was 83 years old a few years back that she made it all up. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even real. So he was mistreated. He was brutally beaten, savagely attacked, had a 70-pound cotton gin fan affixed to his neck, shot, beaten, thrown into the river. And when he was retrieved, his mother said, "I want the world to see the disfiguring impact of white supremacy." And so we didn't have Twitter or Facebook or Tinder or, Instagram, but we had Jet Magazine. Yeah. And Jet Magazine bore witness to the truth of Black people on a weekly basis, right? Gossip, of course, but also stories and aspirations, and especially who was on TV that was Black. It's too numerous now, but there was a time 4 people gonna be on TV next week who were Black. You need to catch them. So it was extremely important, for Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett's mother, to show the world what went on. And Ahmaud Arbery, I wanted to broadcast to the world too. We've seen the video. It's horrendous. It's evil. But I wanted to paint a picture through these words of mine to underscore the barbarism, the rejection of common human decency that was betokened in hunting this man down like an animal and then shooting him 3 times, the son of the 2 men who were hunting him down in the truck, and then the third one who was a witness in the trailing vehicle. But all 3 have since been arrested for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. And telling that truth, narrating that story, understanding that Black curiosity can get you killed. This man was curious about what was going on in an unfinished house, and they showed later many white people doing the same thing. They weren't demonized, they weren't stigmatized, they weren't criminalized. But he must be a thief, he must be a thug, he must be stealing. And so they treated him as if he were already guilty. But even if you're guilty in America, you have a right to a trial. They hunted him down like an animal. So that parallel between Emmett Till and Ahmaud Arbery is resonant. The refusal to give him his day in court, the refusal to acknowledge that you're not judge and jury of anybody, the refusal to acknowledge his humanity as a Black man, all of that eviscerated, removed, destroyed. And they took justice into their own hands for no good reason, even if they felt he had done some wrong. The crime didn't fit the punishment. But beyond that, they deputized themselves because whiteness is a badge in this country that grants immunity to white folk who misbehave toward Black people. So I wanted to draw those parallels and between Ahmaud Arbery and Emmett Till and tell that story, and to tell their stories.
Yeah, I've heard you speak about going from the enslaved and from the plantation to the pavement, and I hope I quoted you correct on that. And so what do you say to school systems and regions who have removed so much of truth and history because it's not comfortable for us to talk about the enslaved. It's not comfortable for us to talk about the hunting, the pursuit, the terror, and the persistence that what we saw with Emmett Till, what we've seen during enslavement, and what we just witnessed with Mr. Christian.
No, it's another great point. You know, we don't want to face it, do we? We don't want to confront it. We live in what Gore Vidal called the United States of Amnesia. And it was Barbra Streisand. I know some of y'all out there don't know who Barbara is. It was Barbra Streisand who said, "What's too painful to remember, we simply choose to forget," in that Alan and Marilyn Bergman penned tune. So we tend to forget. We want to forget. We are addicted to amnesia because we don't want to confront what is before our eyes, what is before our noses, what is before our perception. Yeah. That people are mistreating other people predicated upon, premised on skin color and pigment. And it continues to this day. And until we confront it, there will be more Ahmaud Arbery's being hunted down like an animal and administered justice to, as if they were judge and jury, this father and son team, this tag team of terror. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's extremely important to expose it, to say we would no longer live in amnesia. We have to confront all the elements that constitute and make up these particular cases, so we will no longer be silent in the face of such obvious misconduct and refusal to acknowledge Black humanity. Right.
And I think that acknowledgement has to be front and foremost in our education system and every system. And we can talk about all those systems, but I want to move a little bit. I'm going to eventually get to a few more excerpts that I pulled out for you. But one of my favorite historians, you know, the great Dr. Vincent Harding, right? He said to us that each of us, we must serve as a guidepost for a more humane and just society. And that each of us must be that guidepost. And so my question for you, if that is the case, if we are to serve as the guidepost for what's just and what's humane, the collective we in society, why didn't the murder of Eric Garner move the country the way George Floyd did?
Yeah,
that's guideposts. Why didn't we move then?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a couple of things. First of all, with George Floyd, most of us who could afford to be were at home, right?
Right.
And that makes a big difference, because if you're looking at your phones for work, if you're looking at your devices to keep up, to monitor loved ones, to communicate to those you were related to talk to your doctors, to talk to your therapist, to speak to your friends, do Zoom calls with your sorority and fraternity, and so on. We were at home, many of us who could afford to be.
Right.
And so we were looking at these devices, we were checking them out and used to getting our news on, the camera, so to speak.
Mhm.
The weird prospect of watching our phones and talking to our televisions. So we were home, used to these devices. And when those images of George Floyd flowed through, millions more than ordinarily would have been watching were watching, right? Because they were not at work, or if they were at work, they were at home and they could check their phones. And they depended upon their phones more readily than they had before. So that created an expectation that the images that would fly over these screens that would be transmitted by these devices would be crucial to maintaining a connection to a certain degree with the outside world and bringing us information as well.
Okay.
So that also, all the asterisks were removed for white folk.
Mm.
Unlike what, Eric Garner, even though Eric Garner was clearly not a threat
Right.
as a big guy, but we saw Eric Garner standing up. We didn't see George Floyd, even though he was 6'6",
Mhm.
a tall guy, a man of significant substantive height. But unlike Eric Garner, we didn't see him brought down. We didn't see how big he was. He was already on the ground, nailed there,
Right.
so to speak, held there by a multicultural lineup of cops, 2 white cops, a black cop, and an Asian cop. Sounds like a joke.
Yeah.
2 white cops, an Asian cop, and a black cop walk into a bar. So it's not enough to have multiculturalism, not enough to have diversity. You got to have equity.
Yeah.
But the asterisks were removed. He must have been saying something crazy. No, actually, he was begging for his life. He must have been calling you out of your names. No, he was very remarkably courteous in the same way that Elijah McClain was courteous. He must have been dangerous. Nah, not really. He's on the ground.
Mhm.
He must have been fill in the blank. All that removed. Here's a guy laying prostrate on the ground, begging for his life. Later, we discover his only sin was supposedly passing a $20 bill that the owner said later, most people don't even realize that it's counterfeit what they have.
Right. Right.
So we were at home, the asterisks were removed, and I think white people said enough is enough. Like, the third thing is they could have been a little bit more empathetic with us because of COVID. Jiminy Cricket, they're fighting COVID and you're killing them?
So then let's talk about that, because you write in that Eric Garner chapter about this dual pandemic.
Yes, it's true. I mean, we're facing a pandemic, a global pandemic that everybody's facing, not just us. But the disproportionate impact on Black and brown people and the degree to which Black people had revealed pre-existing conditions, heart disease, diabetes, asthma. Well, why don't you Black people take better care of yourselves? Because we ain't got access. The Obamacare wasn't working for us. Don't cut it away, beef it up. Most Black people, many Black people who are poor still use the emergency ward and room as healthcare maintenance. We got to change that.
Right.
We got to alter that. So those realities are, ever before us when we're talking about COVID-19, because we got COVID-19 and COVID-16-19 and systemic racism and its deleterious impact and destructive effect on America. So we got a virus that is haunting our bodies and threatening to wipe us out in disproportionate numbers. And still to this day, Black people and brown people dying disproportionate to our numbers in the population because of these pre-existing conditions. Okay. And a lot of white people saw that and were like, yo, I mean, they got a lot going on. And so it's extremely important to talk about the pandemic of race and the pandemic of the virus. And both of them had a similar complaint in many instances. I can't breathe. Police, I can't breathe. COVID-19, I can't breathe. So we were unified in our desperate pleas to seek a vaccine for the virus and an antidote to the anti-blackness. And those two things became metaphoric of one another.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's stay there. So you said we were at home, we've got social media, we've got this dual pandemic. So many people joined marches and we saw the mobilization like we've never seen before. Oftentimes in my work, people always say, how do I be an ally? Help me understand how to sustain allyship. Is allyship just creating a hashtag and putting on my my I'm woke t-shirt? I mean, help us understand, Dr. Dyson, what allyship really looks like.
Well, it's all that stuff. I mean, you know, people poo-poo symbols, but symbols are important.
Yeah.
If they weren't, we wouldn't be arguing over the Confederate flag. We wouldn't be trying to take down Robert E. Lee statues or Mississippi flags, the last one in America, to have the Confederacy emblazoned in its insignia. And so, you know, it was extremely important to fight against these vicious symbols. So on the flip side, positive symbols are helpful and uplifting. People, and a lot of Black people now, and I'm sure you've been involved in these conversations, Harriet Tubman. Why you want to put it? Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. And sometimes I want to say Black people, well, I don't get y'all, you know. Like we fighting for not being on stuff, and then we want stuff. Well, that ain't enough. Well, it ain't enough. But it's something. It's significant. To spin Harriets and not Jacksons, to spin Tubmans? Don't you even get the symbolic power of the flow of it? To understand why it is that that's a performance of a certain kind of register of Black identity. Like, damn. Yes, everything you say is true in terms of being critical. It ain't displacing the necessity for the representation of Black people in capital. True. It doesn't displace the political agency that needs to be mobilized in order to defend vulnerable Black communities. True. A bunch of stuff you can say is true. That ain't got a damn thing to do with, can Harriet still be in my wallet? As my man said in, what's the I'm blanking out here. I'm old. The detective who was a spoof on the 60s detectives, Austin Powers.
Oh,
You know, get in my belly, get in my wallet. Let's spend some capital. Let's engage in a kind of symbolic, metaphoric, hermeneutical warfare against the powers that be that have stakes in symbolic articulations. All these purists. So, damn, come on, bloods. So it's extremely important to have symbolic, representation.
right.
And at the same time, to understand the necessity for broader considerations of substantive engagement that reveal our commitment. So, yeah, it's extremely important to talk about what these symbols are and what they ain't, and what occurs and what goes on, and why we've got to take everything into consideration as we continue to fight against white supremacy and the forces of injustice that prevail.
Thank you. So I want to, and I hope people are putting their questions in chat because we will save some time at the end, and hoping they're asking questions of our audience. But I do want to get to part of the Breonna Taylor letter. And the part that moved me is when you said, "My dear sister Breonna, your bright smile and gracious spirit and the movement you have generated around the memory of your life reminds us that we were never what plantation owners and white supremacists claimed us to be.
Right.
Animals, savages." You go on to say, "without passion or feelings." You talk about this quote from Thomas Jefferson, and you said, "Then your death is one of the greatest motivations for us to reckon with this long and colossal theft of our bodies, theft of our lives, theft of our futures, theft of our culture, and recognition of our worth. Talk to me a little bit about that theft. I am fascinated about the act of thievery and Columbusing and how you tied that to the Breonna Taylor letter.
Yes, ma'am. No, well, we got stole to begin with. That's how we got here. You know, it was an act of theft, extricated from our rest in African soil and brought here against our will, forcible immigrants to this nation. Well, the 13 colonies, what became this nation eventually in North America. And so an act of thievery begun our journey here, catalyzed our presence in the Americas, imprinted itself across the disparate activities of Black society, civic and civil and religious and political and popular cultural, expressions of our social beings.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff riven by, underwritten by, driven by, taxed by, thievery and taking and appropriation, as I talk about in that chapter, in a politer form of thievery. Just we're going to appropriate your culture and take your music and take the money that your music can make and take the expressions and so and commodify them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about thievery that way, the thievery of our futures, the theft of our bodies, literally in slavery, the theft of our time. We spent all 250 years. We could have been doing our own thing. We doing your thing. We building your society, taking care of your kids. You're stealing our intimacy. You're stealing the infrastructure of intimacy and support among us. You're stealing the familial and domestic arenas within which we concentrate our efforts to broaden our humanities. You're stealing the means and the substance of our bodies and minds. So that thievery has been consistent. And then stealing Breonna Taylor's life is unavoidably, though not exclusively, metaphoric for how we've been stolen from the get-go, how we have been taken as the booty and bounty of white supremacy itself. We are the manifestation of that, in the same way that we're the instrument and technology of white design and desire.
Yeah.
So that Breonna Taylor really focuses on that and talks about in slavery, how we were stolen, how our time was stolen, how in Jim Crow our bodies were stolen and our labor, and on and on and on. And then, our rock and roll music and our R&B music and our jazz music, they ain't stole hip hop yet. It might be one of the,
there's an effort.
That's right. There's no doubt, but it might be one of those resistant strains. The more it's like the second strain of COVID, it just keeps coming. Now they, you trying to take this? We're gonna mumble rap. Found times around trying to have side will hook side will hit side will set that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
No, actually we don't. So the masked attempt to, we've been masking culture long before we wore the mask. We wear the mask, Paul Lawrence Dunbar said.
Yes, he did.
So we've been wearing the mask and we've been masking in terms of the attempt and effort to conceal who and what we are in order for us to survive, so that white forms of interrogation would not undermine us. So that's what I had in mind in terms of thievery.
All right. I have a few more questions. And of course, we're not going to leave our audience in this dim, hopeless situation. I know you leave every chapter, and I've listened to your sermons, and you leave us with hope at every time. But before we get to the hope, I got a couple of questions for you, just some final ones. Are there any, here in Nashville, there are a couple of groups who are doing some things. There's a whole new generation. I think of hip hop, as we just said, that's being stolen and appropriated as well. I look at hip hop as liberation, as its own movement. There are some young people in town, artists, there are some young agitators, there are young organizations who are really moving. Are there any organizations that you know of that you particularly would say, these are the young folks that I would scar my own hands to liberate with? to join in? Who's that young person, that young group, that young mentee for you?
No, that's a good point. I mean, I love the Black Lives Matter. I mean, people what they've done is extremely important. What they have tried to do in this culture to remind us of, our humanity, of Black humanity, and what that Black humanity represents is extremely important. And so I want to remind us that, that group of young folk, and it's not just an organization, it's a constant realignment of interests that are generated locally, which are extremely important. A young lady named Chelsea Miller was a young activist. I think she may be 24 years old, went to Columbia, is an entrepreneur, but also a social activist speaking out against injustice, especially toward young Black girls. I dig that. I mean, I appreciate that. I applaud that for the kind of work that she's doing to make certain that our young Black women and women of color are represented. Those are just a couple, and what's interesting, of course, is that think about there in Nashville, the Nashville movement was a bunch of young kids, young people, Diane Nash, John Lewis,
Right.
Kelly Miller Smith, a little bit older,
Right.
and, Jim Lawson, a little bit older, doing their thing, young people,
Yeah.
leading the way. So for all these old people, you young people, you don't know, whatever, yeah, I get it. Get off my lawn. But there's a lot of greatness in these young people that we should acknowledge and celebrate.
Agreed. We have some young people in town, organizations like when you all immerse in Nashville, like Equity Alliance and Turk and others. But there are some folks who are worthy of continuing for us to keep them on the forefront as they move toward liberation, because young people are leading it, and they always have led it. Every movement has been led by some young person. So thanks. A fun question. Someone sent this fun question. If we looked at your playlist right now, what's the one song that all of us would be shocked to know that the great Right Reverend Dr. Dyson has on his playlist?
He stopped loving her today. George Jones, 1980. I love country music. And let me say this. I know this ain't going to be popular. What's this young country boy, Nashville? Waylon. Is his name Waylon, W-A-L-E-N, who used the N-word?
I can't say that I'm familiar, Doc.
Yeah, they ripping him apart right now. And look, maybe deservedly so, right? But let's look at context. I argue in this book against cancel culture. I know a lot of young Black people who disagree with me, but I am not down with the cancel culture. They're trying to cancel this young man. Now, he should be held accountable. Right. I heard what he said on TMZ. I went and saw it. Now, he wasn't talking to Black people. He was like, tell them pussy, blank, I'm sorry, like pussycat, I'm sorry.
Of course.
Blank, get away. And then he said the N-word, pussy. Now, he wasn't talking, now, context is important. If he was talking to a Black person over there, dude, I ain't got no holler for you. But if he's saying it in general, first of all, you should know you can't say the word, right? That ain't your prerogative. However, and he should be told that. But however, don't act like he was like talking to a Black person and said that in a way, or even referring to Black people, right? Now, was he trained? Was he taught? Yes. But I'm saying, do we have to, can we talk to him?
Right.
Can we speak to him? Can we say, bruh, what you did was jacked up? It ain't like he's 55 and 60. He ain't my age, 62. Like, dude, you over the hill, you gone. He's a young dude. Can we speak to him? Yeah, it gets started early. Yeah, it's deeply entrenched. Yeah, it ain't just old people dying out. It's passed on. All that's true. But can we speak to him?
Yeah.
So that we don't have to cancel, like they're taking him off the music scene. They're taking him out. Like, damn, I like all that. I mean, can we speak? That's easy to do. More difficult to do is to see how it's linked in your culture, deeply entrenched in dominant white supremacist culture that's in nice liberal circles where it's reproduced too. So now you think Donald Trump is gone and the problem is over. I was arguing with a woman on TV yesterday. No, it ain't. Because I said the Republican Party is the womb. Donald Trump is the baby. Yes, I said it. And I don't mean, now that don't mean all Republicans are racist. That ain't what I'm saying.
No.
by any means. But if we're talking about systems and structures,
Right.
it's structural. Now, there's problems in the Democratic Party too. I ain't saying that. But they don't give in as easily to the white supremacist logics that underwrite the manifold mythologies that accrete around white supremacist beliefs. Who I am, who the other person is, and how we talk to each other. So I'm like, damn, can we not cancel the dude? Can we talk to him? Can we counsel him? As Nick Cannon would say, can we speak to him?
Yeah.
Can we say, bruh, what you did was, yeah, it was jacked up. You wrong. I don't know if you're going to go on a tour with the HBCUs behind you.
Probably not. Probably
No.
not. Probably not.
You know what I'm saying? But hey, I'd rather you do that. Go make some money with fans. Like, hook them up. Like Tennessee State. Whatever. But to cancel the dude, like you're done? Like nobody can ever make a mistake? Right? We ain't talking about the capital United States now. That's different.
Right.
That's some deliberate, self-conscious activity intending to undermine the infrastructure of American democracy and precious institutions of American democracy and the most sacred temple of American democracy, the Capitol, in terms of the people, right? Can we talk to the dude? Can we just like, yo, like his whole career is ruined?
I think that cancel culture is fascinating. I think there's a difference between the canceling and are we just critiquing it with, as you said, with maybe some talking and some counseling as opposed to just canceling.
Yeah, because the thing is, you're gonna get canceled one day. You're like, not you're perfect, but me, I'm subject to it, dog. I'm like, I'm not with it. I'm fighting it right then. No, I ain't perfect, but you can kiss my black behind twice. I'm not going out like that. No.
Twice?
Twice. That's from Spike Lee.
I know it.
What's my man's name? Lawrence Fishburne on Do the Right Thing, not to Do the Right Thing, on School Days, you know.
Yeah.
Twice. So I'm just saying, a little mercy, a little understanding. You can call me a sellout, whatever, dude. I'm saying. Because one day when you make a mistake, it ain't gonna be about blackness. It's gonna be about female engagement, feminist consciousness, indigenous people, whatever it is, the correct and appropriate fashion which we should accord other. And I'm not saying what he said is right, it's wrong. He needs to be held to account. But god dang, do we have to cancel everybody? Who makes a mistake? Can we have redemption? And I'm a Baptist preacher.
So there would be some redemption.
I see this. Do you see this question over here?
I do. I was just going to say, so Jessica chimed in with the question talking about Rochester and the pepper spray. And
you know what?
You see this
that's who needs to be canceled. Them damn cops right there. They need to be. And I don't even believe in cancel. Go cancel their ass right now. Like you gonna pepper spray a 9-year-old girl? Step to a real person who's older than you. Take your gun off. Let's make it fair. Take your billy club off and take your pepper spray off. And let's have at it. Sorry for that behemoth brutality that rises in me. When I see a precious little black girl, I want to kick their asses. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, dude, a 9-year-old girl.
Yeah.
You got me looking crazy because I'm angry.
That's right.
It's evil, it's inexcusable, and it's wrong. But this is the level of respect. This is why Obama, before you get used by people saying that, well, maybe those who are talking about, defunding the police are the problem. And I know he explained it. It was more complicated and I get it. But don't let your significant bully pulpit be platformed to attack the very people who are attacking the problem. You matter that the people who getting at the problem than the problem itself.
Right. It's
like the dogs in the yard barking at each other as opposed to the person trying to get in the gate. Come on, y'all. So, yeah, I'm not down with that. Can we talk? Can we instruct? Can we engage? Because just to cancel is a relief from our responsibility in terms of that Nashville singer. In terms of these cops, hold them accountable. This is repeated, repetitive pathology that needs to be extirpated and resisted.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica, for sending that question in. Yes,
Thank you,
the
Jessica.
lack of humanity yet again permeates. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Dyson. Another question for you. Who are you reading right now? You know, we've got Parnassus Books sponsoring this, bookend by a public library. And so who are you reading right now? And what's on your nightstand? What's next to your nightstand? Or in your office?
You know, I mean, I got a bunch of books back here, but what's Raquel Gates, her book, Double Negative, is extremely important. I think it's 2018, 17, 18, where everything from Flavor Flav down to the Real Housewives, double negative, get it? And looking at the degree to which those Black performances somehow articulate ideas that are troubling and problematic. So I'm reading that. Annalene Dadain, D-E, and then Annalene, Annelien, D-E, and then D-I-J-N, Dadain, from the Netherlands. Freedom and Unruly History. It's a dope book, just like Raquel Gates's book is a dope book. And then Christian Citizens by, I think it's Elizabeth Jenkins. Just dope books that help us understand the complicated history of freedom, quest for self-determination, and cultural expression and performance.
Okay, great. And so I got a question that came in sidebar over here, Dr. Dyson. The person said, I love hearing the human side of these amazing VIPs. Dr. Dyson is known to bust out any rhyme at any given time. I definitely would like to know if he could leave us with something spontaneous and who that artist would be to our audience.
Say again. So who would
they want to know? So they want to know, like, you are constantly at any given moment will just start spitting, whether that's Nas or Tupac or whoever you feel the need, whoever your spirit moves. Right. This person wants to know if you had to look at liberation right now and you just wanted to bust out a line, what would that be?
So they want me to freestyle, or they want me to pull from a rapper?
Yeah, they might want me to freestyle, Dr. Dyson, but we don't want to do that. So they want you to freestyle.
They want me to freestyle. I've been looking at freedom like they got this deed on the whole United States property of our unconscious minds. And now they got sublimes and they got sublines, because I'm standing at the Capitol trying to read this Capitol offense, looking at these cats trying to build a fence, keeping us out. Why, you trying to chase that clout? You trying to be a lout? No, I doubt what you're doing is sincere. So when I look at you, I have no fear. Why don't you peer into your beer and look at me, because I'm near. I'm not your peer. I'm standing above that craziness, looking at this stuff like it's what, laziness? Maybe it is your refusal to take it seriously. So when I look at you, I say hysteriously that it's mysteriously something that keeps disappearing. So when I look at you, I say I'm tearing, crying these tears of regret. And every time I look at you, I lose respect, because you won't keep up the tradition and the trajectory of people who are trying to be free. And so for all of those out there, I say much love and respect. So if I was going to freestyle.
Now, if you were going to do it. All right, you get 2 snaps from me, Dr. Dyson.
You know, but my man Jay said, Bin Laden been happening in Manhattan. Back then, the police was Al Qaeda to black men. Or Tupac said, just the other day, I got lynched by some crooked cops. And to this day, them same cops on the beat getting major pay. But when I get my check, they taking tax out. So we paying the cops to knock the blacks out.
Mm-hmm. You get 2 snaps from me, Dr. Dyson. I guess you weren't expecting to just freestyle. Thank you for that that caller who just sent that text. Thank you. We have just a few minutes before we wrap up, and I want you to leave us with some hope. So how do we be hopeful in what seems like a hopeless situation? You paint these pictures, you give us imagery of these martyrs, and you talk about blue plague, and you talk about this is a reckoning of America. And again, I hope everyone goes out and read this book. It's only 230 plus pages, people. Long time coming, Reckoning with Race in America. Dr. Dyson, leave us with some hope.
Well, the great Howard Thurman, Black mystic and prophet, said, our slave foreparents, right, facing the long rows of cotton, the rawhide whip of the overseer, said, we ain't gonna be victims of these events. These events will not exhaust our capacity to reimagine a future. And so we must reimagine a future. He said, be a prisoner of the event or be a prisoner of hope. Because when you're a prisoner of hope, you see beyond, and hope is when it's saying in the Bible, hope against hope. What? Not optimism, which is a shallow virtue, as Rhino Niebuhr pointed out. You put your finger in the air and figure out which way the wind is blowing. Hope says it's deeper than that. It's more profound than that. We're going to reach into stuff that is not evident to pull forth something that is manifest as a projection of the possible, borrowed from as a down payment on today. And so when you do that, then you're transacting between future possibilities and present realities and negotiating from a position of strength, because you have borrowed from a future that will have to be great in order for us to survive. So that's the kind of hope I believe in.
All right. All right. I think at the end of one of your letters, you talked about that hope, and you said, at least I reckon so. So unless all of us reckon so. So to the Right Reverend Dr. Freestyle, and at the drop of a hat, shout out to all of the love from everyone who's tuning in. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, we thank you on behalf of Parnassus Books, on behalf of the Public Library, the City of Nashville, and all of us who tuned in tonight. We sincerely thank you. We thank you for pricking our hearts with this book and putting bringing the lives of each of these martyrs, even through death, in our consciousness. We thank you for reminding us that there's still work for us to be done, to do. Thank you for reminding us that we can't really be tired. It's okay to acknowledge that tiredness and take care of ourselves, but we must continue to do the work. We thank you for your ongoing work and your effort, and hope we can do this again.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much for your expert engagement and your fearless facilitation. I appreciate you so very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining in tonight. Again, on behalf of Parnassus Books, Nashville Public Library, we thank you for joining us for our evening conversation with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Good night.
Good night.
And go buy the book. Go buy the book, check it out, do something, read the book. Have a good night.
Thank you. God bless you now.
God bless you. Thank you.